Hey, everybody. Welcome to the second episode today for the Concealed Carry podcast. Guess who's with me? Mr. Jacob Paulsen himself.
Yeah. At this point, I may not be special, but at least I'm classic.
Classic. You are classic.
Been here since the beginning.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. Getting those notifications coming through from Facebook and YouTube. Hello, all Facebook, YouTube folks. It's good to see those notifications actually work consistently as of the last several months. There was a time where it was like hit and miss, but everything's been working pretty well lately.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I always get them.
Cool. Who's going to be the first to comment, I wonder? Randy.
Randy's the first.
With a close second to Sean. Congrats. Yeah. All right. Sorry, my wife texted me there for a second there. I had to respond to her quick. She's like, "You recording right now?" I'm like, "Yep."
Yes, I am.
We're doing the thing. We do the thing we do pretty much every Wednesday. Hello, Fernando, Sean. We're all doing great. Well, Jacob would tell you I'm doing fine because every day is fine.
More like okay.
Okay.
Yeah, today's an okay day.
Yeah. So this episode is going to be a legislative news update episode. So we got some great stuff to share with you today, both on the pro-gun and anti-gun side of the equation. So you'll want to stick around and stay tuned and get the latest news so you know what to pay attention to as it relates to your Second Amendment rights. Hello, Tim. Thanks for joining. Sean's got a question, but you know what, Sean, you can ask. May or may not be able to answer. We'll see. All right, buddy. And I don't know where Jacob went.
I'm back.
There he is. Hey, look, it's Casey. And Casey, we learned last episode, Jacob, she's in Florida on vacay.
Well, that's a rough place to be this time of year.
It's probably a little warm.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I've always enjoyed my trips to Florida, so guess I can't complain too much.
I have no comment.
Well, when you and I were there last, it was pretty nice. Pretty nice.
Yeah, it's true. You know, we're there. Was that 2017? September 2017. September's probably a better time to be in Florida, but
the weather was great.
It was acceptable.
And when I was there in October of last year, it was also pretty great, although we did get poured on pretty handily on one of the days.
October would be a good time to be in Florida.
Yeah, but it was lovely. Well, guys, let's kick off the recorded audio portion of the show. We got a few of you watching, and we thank you for being here. So again, this is legislative updates, so stay tuned. Fasten those seatbelts. Hold on. Going to be a riot of an episode. All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. This is the Concealed Carry Podcast, Season 3, Episode 4. And welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network, brought to you by XS Sites. Today is Wednesday, July 21st, 2021, as of the recording of this show. And I'm your host, Riley Bowman, joined today by founder and company president, Mr. Jacob S. Paulsen.
I feel like there should be some music playing.
Well, there is very subtle background music that is put in post-processing. But you mean like a what do you call that? A walk-on song?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Something like that. You just really built it up really good. Like you just sound like a radio announcer. And so I thought, yeah, there should be music with this.
This would be an interesting question. What would you choose for a walk-on song?
Final Countdown for sure.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. I don't know why, but what just came to my mind was an old classic, which yours is too, but Chariots of Fire. You know,
classic.
Do. Anyway, So, guys, welcome to the show today. This is a legislative news updates episode. So we look forward to bringing to you the latest legislative news. We want to keep you guys up to speed on all the goings on in the industry, politically speaking, as it relates to your Second Amendment rights. We got some pro-gun and anti-gun news for you here today, including some developments that were unfortunate to learn about. We had, I think somebody just launched a firework outside my window. Anyway, one of those whistling, bottle rockets. Anyway, including an update out of Louisiana. So kind of some unfortunate news there. We were looking forward to constitutional carry there, but looks like it may not be yet to be for the state of Louisiana. Whereas there have been several other states that have joined the ranks of constitutional carry states this year. We've got some other important news we'll bring to you here shortly. But first, today's episode is brought to you by XS Sites, our title sponsor. And we're so proud to have them as a sponsor of the podcast. XS Sites are sites I've been using for several years now. People have long heard I'm a huge fan of the F8 night sights. Still am. I think they're fantastic. Still have them on several of my guns and shoot and use those frequently. So F8 night sights, my pick. Jacob, do they have anything that interests you?
So
you like the F8s all right too, don't
you? I like the F8s just fine.
Yeah.
The truth is I'm not as discerning as you would be, like the real truth. Like I'm less picky. Mm-hmm. So I like their big dot. I think that's fine. I think that they have lots of sights that meet my basic criteria, which is bright front sight that's easily findable in dark black rear notch.
Yeah.
Right. So the F8s, I think you like and are drawn to just because they're like exaggerated that criteria. Like that criteria is met like times 5. It's just really distinct. Mm-hmm. But I think that all their sights, can do that depending on how you combine the front and rear sights.
Yeah. One thing they do that's kind of interesting and unique as compared to some of their competitors is, they have the bright, high contrast, like let's say orange. In the case of the F8s that I have on my guns, they're a bright orange circle on the front sight. But what maybe people don't realize is they actually also use photoluminescent technology with those dots, so that when you like if you get sunlight source on them, or even light source, like if I was in a low light situation and I was doing like a neck index or FBI type light technique, it would actually illuminate that front sight, and it would actually glow like a very almost like neon bright color. And that's something that a lot of other sights actually don't do. So you actually get, first off, you basically get 3 ways that the sights can contrast. You get the bright orange of the color of the sight, and they do have some other sights with different colors, but I like the orange quite a bit for me personally. Then you get this kind of like glowing neon yellow greenish color when the photoluminescence is activated. And then you also get the center tritium vial a dot on the front sight as well. So there's 3 ways really that you're going to be able to see these sights in a variety of lighting conditions. And that's the thing that I appreciate about them, is that they're visible in virtually all lighting conditions. So, and by the way, I don't excuse the fact that like we should be using light and stuff to identify threats before we shoot. Like night sights are not quite as in vogue as they once were, but it's nice to know that you've got solutions for like all these different lighting circumstances or situations you might find yourself in. And the only sight company I know that does it quite as well is XS Sights. So
in vogue, that was nice. That was big words.
Sometimes I pull things out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would add is that XS Sights is extremely competitive price-wise, and they're made in the U.S.
Yes.
And that is a pretty impressive combination.
In Texas, the great state of Texas. So, and we've talked about that before when we've talked about them as sponsors of the podcast as well. They're also sponsors of our Guardian Conference later this year in September in Oklahoma City. So we're really excited to have them on board with that as well. Guys, check out XS Sights at xssights.com. That is the letter X, letter S, sights, as you would normally spell it. So xssights.com. Also, we're excited to announce to you now. Neither Jacob nor I are wearing one yet because that's how new it is. Jacob has one, I believe. I do not.
Wore it yesterday.
Is the brand. Yeah, you just barely got it. The brand new concealedcarry.com shall not be infringed T-shirt. It's a pretty cool design. In fact, I've got a screen share I can do here for those of you that are viewing along with us. But this is just this new design that our guy Mitch put this together, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. No, sorry. It's not true. Mitch did not do this one.
Oh, right. Mitch also worked on something recently. I was thinking, getting the two confused. But here you go, guys. Those of you viewing, it's just a cool, simple little design, but cool, right? I mean, just reminding us of what our Second Amendment says, which is shall not be infringed. You got this cool little motif that's sort of a mock-up of a, sort of a U.S. flag with stars and stripes, but the stripes are different models of guns and things. And it's just a cool, sort of modern design. I like it. I'm excited to get my own.
Check it out. Concealedcarry.com.
Now, where you can find the new Shall Not Be Infringed t-shirt is at concealedcarry.com/infringed shirt. If you don't know how to spell that, look it up. Okay, I'll tell you. Concealedcarry.com/INFRINGED SHIRT. Sorry if I kind of bungled that a little bit. Infringed shirt. Anyway, guys, we appreciate your support of us, our sponsors, our site. Any orders that come through our site directly, we greatly appreciate for products like this new Shall Not Be Infringed t-shirt, because this is how we make our living. All right. And if you don't shop from us or from our sponsors, then we don't make a living. So, this podcast has been sponsored since the beginning, as a part of our business by concealedcarry.com. And we hope that we can bring to you not only a great podcast in terms of content, but also great and valuable products on our site and from our sponsors as well. So thanks for supporting our sponsors that supports us. Today's episode, as I mentioned, is a legislative updates episode. I'm going to jump right into this first story, Jacob, since I kind of sprung this one on you. But this is just this is pretty much new news. I call it breaking news, if you will. It actually was published last night. But we've talked on the podcast before, including on a previous legislative news episode, about this case from New York State that's going to the Supreme Court that I believe they are set to hear it this fall. So that's exciting. That means we probably won't hear a ruling on it until next spring. But it's moving forward. And what the case is basically challenging New York's law prohibiting people from, New York has made it so difficult for ordinary citizens to obtain and carry guns concealed for personal defense. Like in New York City, it's virtually impossible. In the rest of the state, it's not impossible, but it's very, very difficult, right? You and I know, Jacob, we've got a dear friend in New York City itself that, has shared with us his experience and what it's like going through the permitting process just to buy a gun in New York City, yet alone be able to carry one, is a whole other set of hoops to jump through that, again, is virtually impossible for most people to go through and is quite expensive as well. But basically, we're putting all of that on the chopping block with this case going to the Supreme Court later this fall. The latest news here is that Senator Ted Cruz and 24 other Senate Republicans, including Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, filed an amicus brief yesterday in this case. That means they're basically filing as a friend of the court. They are joining, if you will, along with this case and making it known that on behalf of the plaintiff, they want it to be known that, hey, this is the side we're on, and here's our position on that. And I appreciate the perspective they offer in the statement that they offered with this amicus brief by basically saying, like, look, we recognize that legislators in the state of New York, in Albany, in New York City, or in Washington, D.C., we recognize that we have differences of opinion and that many legislators don't agree with the Second Amendment, But our position is that the framers put it in there for a reason. And whether we like the Second Amendment or not, it needs to be upheld by the Supreme Court. And that's really a summary of their position with this amicus brief. But I appreciate, it's good to have. I mean, this is not just one or two. This is, basically a fourth of the U.S. Senate that is all joining forces to express their opinion on this very, very important case. That I hope goes in the Second Amendment's favor.
Yeah. So this stuff is hard because I think that we as a community think that I got to be careful what I say or I'm going to get hate mail, Riley. Laws are up for interpretation. So we have to just keep that in mind, that there's some context here that, the law says something, says shall not be infringed. It says right to keep and bear arms. It says certain things. But as a society, we all agree and accept that there have to be some reasonable restrictions on those rights. For example, I hear people all the time say, well, it says shall not be infringed. It's like, well, I agree on the spirit of that, but do you think that inmates in prison then should be allowed to buy guns and have them in prison with them? No, of course not. Okay, so then we agree that there's got to be some reasonable restrictions on the right to keep and bear arms. What we don't agree on is what those rights are, or what is a reasonable restriction. Now, the good news is that we've had some Supreme Court decisions that have started to draw a line and make it very clear, right? Heller 1 and Heller 2 said that the Second Amendment does cover the individual's right to own a gun for personal protection. And so now this decision, this fall, when they hear this case, hopefully leads us to a place where the Supreme Court says, not only, as we're already determined, does the Second Amendment cover your right to own a gun personally for personal protection, but in order for that to be true, you have to be allowed to take it outside the home with you. Right. Mm-hmm. And that is what we need. We need the Supreme Court to clarify what all of us probably listening to and watching this already feel very strongly, which is that, well, the Second Amendment should, in our opinion, it does mean that you have the right to have the gun with you where you go, where reasonable. And that would mean outside the home. But the Supreme Court has yet to decide that. And that's why this is critical. That's why this matters.
Yeah. Because to this point, we've had rulings with limits, right, as far as how far those rulings could be extended, and that has been the modus operandi. Geez, I'm just struggling to get words.
Just go with MO.
MO, right? That has been kind of the characteristic of this current court for some time. People would love for them to do the kind of this overarching ruling that clarifies it in this huge, massive, universal way. But even with this case, it's still going to probably have some limitations as far as to how far this ruling will extend.
It's scope. Yeah.
Yes, the scope, right. Meaning I'm referring to things like the McDonald ruling and the Heller decision. This is likely to fall in the same boat as far as there will be a scope that, hey, it extends so far. But here's the thing. We keep getting more and more of these cases over time, and we're clarifying more and more pieces of the Second Amendment that hopefully overall, over time, really clarifies it fairly broadly. And we're working more that direction all the time, it would seem. And with the current makeup of the court, it's all very promising as well.
Yeah, and you got to have that kind of long-term vision, right? You have to recognize what's happened over time, right? I mean, you don't have to go back that far, 2005, to a world where there was no clarity on the Second Amendment, dang near. 2005, we basically had no freaking clue what it meant as far as courts were concerned. Like, all of us can have our own personal interpretation, what we think it should mean. But there really is nothing, until Heller 1, until McDonald, and then Heller 2, we really had no idea. So, I mean, this is really, we're dragging this one out further than we need to, but I think it's critical. The Chicago decision, the Illinois decision that in 2011 that caused them to institute a concealed carry permit program is really interesting, because there you have a federal district court who basically rules and says, no, you are not giving people you're not allowing them to exercise their Second Amendment right if you don't allow them in some way to carry a firearm in personal defense. And so Illinois says, yeah, no problem. We'll institute a concealed carry permit program. And soon after, we see DC institute one as well. And now in all 50 states plus DC, there's some sort of concealed carry permit program. However, the existence of the program, if it doesn't actually make it such that a reasonable person without any reasonable criminal record can't get that permit, then it's still infringing, isn't it? And that's what this next step in that journey is. In the journey of defining the Second Amendment, that's where we're at now. We've had a decision, granted a federal district decision, but a strong one, that said, hey, no, there's got to be some methodology. And so the precedent has been set that, okay, there's got to be a permitting program. But you look at states like Hawaii, New York City, Maryland, New Jersey, where yes, the permit program exists, but it's virtually impossible to actually get that permit. Certain counties in California could be on that list as well.
Yep.
Then we're not there yet, right? That's what this is about. That's what this is for. Yep.
Yeah. Well, moving on, and I think it actually makes a lot of sense because it's sort of a similar vein topically. To move to this Breitbart.com story, federal appeals court handgun purchase ban for 18 to 20-year-olds unconstitutional. And this is a pretty big, court of appeals ruling, which is a 3-judge panel. Now, this could still be asked for an en banc review of a broader court, but this is pretty huge. And I thought this was a natural segue from what we were just talking about, Jacob, because there's some really powerful stuff that's actually written in this 3-judge in this ruling from this 3-judge panel on the issue of, hey, 18, 19, and 20-year-olds presently, and since what, 1980,
is it 86?
86, I think, haven't been able to purchase handguns, right? Unless you got to be 21 years of age or older. And so this is a really, really cool ruling to see. And granted, it's a court of appeals, so this would need to go to the national level to really have national implications. But Jacob, I imagine you went through this and are familiar with this appeals court ruling. What was kind of the gist of this one?
So, in case you don't know, it's currently a felony for anyone under the age of 21 to purchase a handgun. It just can't do it, right?
And handgun ammo.
Right, correct. Yeah, they can purchase a long gun. That's fine, which we had recent drama about that, but no handgun. And so we saw a lot of pushes after Parkland to drive the purchase of long guns to 21 as well. And now we're seeing this decision, which is basically the opposite direction, saying, no, we need to bring handguns down to 18, where long guns are. And so I think that's a pretty critical kind of concept. And that's the gist. The gist is, wait a minute, like if the way the decision was written by this 3-panel judge court is that it's very clear that our founding fathers intended for 18, 19, and 20-year-olds to be part of the local militia, to the degree that in many jurisdictions it was required. It was mandated that an 18-year-old be part of the militia and bring their own gun with them, supply their own firearm. And so if it's clear that the people who wrote the Second Amendment intended for it to be extended to 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, then why are we, that it's got to be unconstitutional that those same people not be able to buy a common handgun that's used, to that degree today. That's the gist of the thing. For those who don't know the 4th District Court, because what's interesting about this kind of decision, when you have a district court who's saying, well, something that, a federal law is unconstitutional, that's super awkward, right? Because the federal district court doesn't have the authority to eliminate a federal law. Now, it could have some implications, right? It could cause this law to be debated, by the U.S. Supreme Court or by the legislature or who knows, whatever else. And it could definitely have implications within that district court region, right? Within that area where that court operates. So I wanted to quickly mention the states that are included in the 4th District Court, which are West Virginia, I think all of Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, and South Carolina. So those all make up the Fourth Circuit Court.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good to know. And it's not uncommon. I don't recall from this news story, or if it even mentions it, it's not uncommon with rulings like this that they will, put an injunction on it. In other words, not suggest that anything takes effect. Meaning, it's not like, I don't think this is saying that. And again, I don't remember reading about this or not, but it's not uncommon for them to say suddenly, well, guess what? If you live in one of these states in the Fourth Circuit, then you can just, if you're 18, 19, 20, you can go right out and buy handguns now. It's not uncommon for them to be, well, hold on, until this is settled further, we know this is going to go up. We know it's going to be appealed or that kind of thing. Anyway, I don't know. But I do want to highlight a couple of key phrases that come from the actual opinion, the majority opinion written by Judge Julius Richardson and joined by Judge Stephen Agree. I love that name. I'm Judge Agree. I agree with you. Might be a little awkward when Judge Agree doesn't agree. Anyway, there's some really cool things. Like, I could tell they really did their homework on this case. Now, whether they already knew a lot of this stuff or whether they researched it further, but I think it would behoove any judge to study and research this part of our history a little bit further, because some of the stuff they pull out of this is really interesting. First of all, I won't read everything, but this is a really cool quote from this opinion. They say that in the founders' world, individual self-protection and community defense were not wholly separate spheres. Basically saying that the founders believed that you couldn't really separate personal or individual protection from community defense. So those that would try to argue that, well, the Second Amendment is more about a community defense versus an individual defense, they're saying that that's not really cohesive with what the founders envisioned and how the world actually was at that time. Another really cool quote that jumped out at me was where they talk about in 1791, when the Second Amendment was ratified, Congress began debating invoking its power under the militia clauses to better organize the militias for federal use in emergencies. And it says that the effort was even pushed by Secretary of War Henry Knox, who argued to Congress that while the military age has generally commenced at 16, okay, put that into context, right? The age for the federal select militia should be set at 18 because, and here's the reasoning, the youth of 16 do not commonly attain such a degree of robust strength as to enable them to sustain without injury the hardships incident to the field. So this becomes a historically and federally recognized reasoning behind the age of, well, why 18? And why 18 in matters such as the militia? And it was basically believed that, well, hey, younger than 18, you're a little bit still too small and too weak and not strong enough and able to handle the hardships of war, basically.
Yeah, if they get injured, they're probably not going to make it.
Yeah. And there was another, and it's not mentioned in this article, but there was another one that I read about this ruling that mentioned how the expectation from many of those that would be drafted, if you will, into the militia at age 18 or later was that they would have to bring their own weapon with them. And so how it had to be that founders that they intended for 18 plus year olds to be able to possess firearms, because if they went into the militia at 18, they'd have to bring their own firearm. And that was also part of this opinion that I saw published in another area that was pretty cool to read. So really awesome research and homework done by these two judges on this ruling.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Well, we'll see where this Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals opinion goes from here. Let's go now to this bearingarms.com article. California judge gives green light to lawsuit against Smith & Wesson.
This feels like a broken record, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So, I don't know. We've been doing this podcast for 5 years, 5.5 years. I don't know how many times we've seen this happen, at least 4 or 5. So, maybe it's basically you count on this happening once a year. But someone who lost somebody in a shooting is approached by big anti-gun lobbyists, and they say, hey, you lost someone, we can get you some money, and more importantly, we can use your tragedy to to go after the horrible gun makers who make guns and really cripple them. And tragic lost people say, yes, that's a good idea, and I'd like money too. And so you get huge anti-gun lobbyist group teamed up with, under the guise of, I shouldn't say under the guise, but with the names of these people who lost family members in some tragedy, to go file a lawsuit against a gun manufacturer. Now, it's a broken record because we always know the end of the story. They're going to lose the lawsuit. Like, the federal law is really clear on this. Like, it just, we got endless, it seems like, I'm being facetious, but we have what seems like endless examples of the courts holding up the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act, PLCAA. And because we know how it's going to end, you might ask, well, then why? Like, why are people trying to sue gun manufacturers? In this case, they're trying to sue to bring suit against Smith & Wesson. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But why would they do that? It's all about the money. It's about dragging this out and causing Smith & Wesson to spend a bunch of money. It's also because when you take someone to court, it allows you to get access to a bunch of their records, right? Oh, now they have to make discoverable this information about their business. They have to make public this information about their manufacturing process or about their marketing campaigns and objectives. And so it's all about attack on the industry, despite knowing it directly can't succeed. It's all about the indirect benefits to the anti-gun lobby. So in this case, the game is all about, well, Smith & Wesson was actively choosing to market a product to children, who are at higher risk for committing these horrible, violent crimes. And Smith & Wesson actively, knowingly built a gun that could readily be converted into an illegal thing, fully automatic gun. And so those are their two crimes, right? I mean, it'd be one thing if they just, built guns, whatever. But no. They went above and beyond. They marketed them to these at-risk youth, and they made a gun that's readily convertible into an illegal item. And so what this ruling is not, oh yeah, Smith & Wesson is guilty. This ruling is, okay, on one of these charges, we're calling BS. On the other one, we see it as potentially viable. So we're going to allow this lawsuit to happen. The courts will still sort it out. We probably know how it's going to end. But this decision is just that we're going to allow this to proceed on this count.
What's interesting about this case is how the Brady campaign is, their approach for arguing this case. So a couple of the arguments they're trying to make. Number one, they're trying to argue that Smith & Wesson knowingly violated federal law regarding sales of quote unquote machine guns to the general public. Okay. Even though the weapons in question are of your standard AR-15 semi-automatic design, they're trying to make the argument that semi-automatic AR-15s are readily convertible to become machine guns. And that Smith & Wesson knows this, therefore they should be liable for their Smith & Wesson rifle being used in the shooting. This was, by the way, this lawsuit comes out of it comes from family members of victims of the shooting at the Chabad of Poway synagogue in, I'm probably butchering pronunciations, in Poway, California in 2019. So apparently Smith & Wesson rifle was used in that. I don't know whether the person that was using that had readily converted that to be able or be capable of fully auto fire, but it's really irrelevant. Brady campaign's trying to argue that Smith & Wesson knowingly is making their AR-15 rifles to be readily convertible to be machine guns. And this is consistent with the current anti-gun side of, of anti-gun legislation, of gun control, that are trying to paint the AR-15 rifle as being this terrible weapon of mass destruction, right? David Chipman, who, is up, has been talked about quite a bit in recent history about, leading the ATF, who, he's basically made similar statements, right? That, talking about semi-automatic guns and how easy it is to get, I guess, fully automatic guns or whatever. I don't know. Curiously enough, the judge initially sounded like he was going to reject their argument about this, but now is still allowing them to make the argument conflating semi-automatic rifles with machine guns, says the article. But the judge also decided that their second argument, which was that the other argument that Brady's trying to make is that Smith & Wesson is targeting marketing to young people. And that the idea is that it's well known that younger people tend to be those that commit these mass shootings, and that Smith & Wesson, by their targeting of young people, as it says in their marketing, is influencing that in some regard. I think that's quite a stretch.
Well,
the judge is allowing this to go forward.
Yeah, this is a long stretch. The AR-15 thing, it should be where the danger signs go off a little bit, right? But I honestly don't think this thing will stand water when it all comes down to it. Like I said, before. But can a semi-automatic AR-15 be converted to full auto? Of course it can. Obviously it can. But doing that's already a crime. Like, that's already a criminal offense without proper licenses and stuff that I don't have. Riley doesn't have it. So me and Riley can't go converting our AR-15s to fully automatic. That would be criminal. So, yeah, it's already criminal. Like, I don't think we need to go make the AR-15 illegal because it could be converted into something illegal. Like, things that are illegal are already illegal. It's already a crime to do that. I mean, can't a large number of objects in my home be converted into illegal things? I mean, household materials can be made into bombs. But most of those household materials are not illegal. Some of them are regulated, right. To some degree, which AR-15s are already pretty regulated. So anyway, I just think the whole thing's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, it's ridiculous too, because a fully automatic rifle is far from, if I want to be, I hate saying this, or I want to be careful saying this. If I was to commit mass murder, fully automatic is not the way I'd do it.
Yeah, pretty inefficient tool.
Because I'll be far more effective if I actually aim shots in critical parts of the body. And that behooves me to not use fully auto, because I won't be as precise. So it's a red herring argument anyway, because this is not really an issue. Now, Scott on Facebook asks, what marketing did they supposedly do towards children? And by the way, they specifically, like, in this, it says young people, and they're actually talking, like, I don't know where the age comes from,
like,
but
35 and younger, or 34 and younger, or something like that.
People that are age 35 and younger, but the type of target or type of marketing that Brady campaign is complaining about is how they were targeting youth with advertisements over social media and through video game-like commercials, despite the known risks that young people in that demographic are highly susceptible to that type of advertising and have disproportionately perpetrated mass shootings using similar firearms. That's quoting from their statement there. So, yeah, you know what? Maybe you should be talking to the video game companies, because what's perpetrated in video games is probably far more influential than, like, Smith & Wesson's marketing, frankly.
And they're not protected by federal law either.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But
besides the fact that, okay, even if they are marketing, you still have to be of a certain age to actually purchase and acquire those weapons and stuff. So, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that, a gun manufacturer should not be running advertising specifically targeting
children.
8-year-olds. Like, yeah, sure. I'm like, if we want to regulate that, like, I'd like to, depending on how it's written and all those kinds of things, I could probably endorse that law. Like, I think that's probably not a bad idea. In the same way, we don't allow cigarette companies to target youth either. So, yeah, I'm not. I get that, but that, just because the thing happens to be present in a video game they're playing, or if advertising is being run I mean, I don't know the details. I haven't seen the discovery, right? I don't have access to the evidence that they're bringing to trial.
Sure.
But I find it hard to believe that Smith & Wesson is running ads on Facebook targeting 14-year-olds that make AR-15s look awesome with the click here to buy button. I just don't. I have a hard time believing that's true.
Yeah. Besides, it's silly and pointless because I have magazines sitting on my coffee table right now, American Rifleman, Guns and Ammo, and the USPSA magazine that has all kinds of advertising in it. That's not necessarily maybe geared to or targeted to my young children, but they're going to see it because it's in my living room. So what? Big whoop. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, let's go now to Louisiana. So I kind of hinted at this earlier, but unfortunately, the constitutional carry bill that was passed a month and a half or so ago in Louisiana was vetoed by Governor Edwards on June 28th, and unfortunately, they did not. The Senate Republicans were not able to get enough support to override that veto. So the constitutional carry bill that we previously talked about on a legislative update episode is not, constitutional carry is dead in Louisiana because of this. Vetoed by governor.
At least for this year. Yeah.
Vetoed by the governor, and they couldn't overcome it. It kind of looked like maybe they would be able to, but there were at least 3 Republicans that voted against that, overriding that veto. So it just didn't
changed their vote.
Yeah, they actually changed their vote from, they supported the bill when it went through the legislature in the first place, but because the governor vetoed it, apparently decided they needed to go the other way. I don't know. I was joking with you beforehand. I kind of feel like there was probably some promises made behind the scenes to for the governor to maybe prioritize some certain people's projects to sway their vote. I don't know. That sort of thing happens all the time, obviously.
All the time, right? It's politics in nature. Someone might say, "Well, this is for the greater good" or whatever. One person specifically, Senator Patrick Connick, said that since that time, meaning when he originally voted for the bill, I've talked to my law enforcement agencies at home. Those law officers said, please don't override this veto. So he claims that, his constituents are at least the law enforcement officers and that are his constituents, asked him to not override the veto, to let the veto stand.
Yeah.
Maybe that's true. I don't know. But, we always see, law enforcement officials who are generally elected people, not actually like cops who rose through the ranks. They tend to not like constitutional carry.
Well,
that's pretty standard.
Sheriffs usually are a little more pro-gun. A lot of times, it's usually the chief of police. The chiefs that are appointed by mayors that tend to be more anti-gun and stuff like that. That's where like this was actually one that surprised me a little bit because it's actually the Plaquemines Parish Sheriff, the Gretna Sheriff, and the West Wago chief of police. There were 3 specific ones that he listed that said, please don't override this bill. I think that's a dang shame that you have these law enforcement officers, these sheriffs, this chief of police saying this. In the case of sheriffs, to your point, those are elected officials in most instances. So, folks, if you live in Louisiana and you have one of your sheriffs that voiced opposition to this bill, I would be expressing my displeasure with them and letting them know that that's going to be held against them when they come up for re-election. In the case of a chief of police, you may not have as much influence there because they're often appointed by a city council or mayor.
They serve at the pleasure of the mayor. Yeah, so they're still an elected official behind that appointment.
Mm-hmm. So we've got a sheriff here right now, Jacob. A kind of sidebar here, but Jefferson County Sheriff Schrader, he's voicing his opposition to. We have the Foothills Parks and Recreation District, that we have parks that are in our area that are managed by Foothills, and they are trying to. They're looking at passing a no gun policy in their parks. And Sheriff Schrader straight up sent a letter saying, as sheriff, I'm not going to enforce anybody that's caught with guns in your parks.
Yeah, we like Sheriff Schroeder. He does right by the people.
Anyway, moving on to Hawaii. You mentioned Hawaii earlier as an example.
Hawaii.
Yeah. So tell us, we got House Bill 1366 and House Bill 31. Two anti-gun bills that have been signed. So they are now officially law in Hawaii.
Let me start by saying that Hawaii does not get enough attention from our community. What I mean by that is when you think of like the anti-gun states, the states with the most strict, horrible gun laws, we often cite places like Chicago and New York and New Jersey. All that is very much so earned. However, none of them hold a candle to Hawaii. Hawaii is the worst, in my opinion. In my opinion, Hawaii is the worst state relative to gun laws there is. Like, nothing compares, in my humble opinion. And these two new laws are mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of them are new laws. They're both kind of clarifications or adding some detail to existing gun control laws that are already on the books. So House Bill 1366, basically it changes the language regarding home-built firearms, ghost guns. So previously, when the law went into effect, it allowed for sort of like a grandfathered in thing. Like, well, if you already had these guns, right, if you owned them prior to the ban going into effect last year, it's cool, it's all good. Well, not anymore. The new law, House Bill 1366, changes that. It amends that component. It goes into effect, by the way, on January 1st, 2022. So if you live in Hawaii and you own a bunch of non-serialized guns, you might want to bail before January. House Bill 31, it amends and changes the mandatory firearms storage law, which I read today. It's pretty interesting. But the change is it increases the age. Because the way Hawaii's mandatory storage law works is the law only takes effect in your home if you have children in your home that reasonably might gain access. So what changed is the definition of children from a maximum age of 16 up to 18. So, prior to this new law going into effect, my 17-year-old, if my youngest kid in the house was 17, I was exempt from the mandatory storage law. And now with this new law, House Bill 31, which goes into effect immediately when it was signed by the governor. So it's law now. That changes where now my 17-year-old, because I have a 17-year-old in the house or an 18-year-old in the house, I'm now accountable to the Hawaii mandatory storage requirements.
Yeah. How many times have we shared stories in our Justified Saves episodes where juveniles, those under 18, were able to obtain firearms within the home and successfully defend themselves and others within the home with them?
Many times. Yeah.
So you're basically making it illegal in a state like Hawaii to, for that to be a possibility. Like that can no longer happen. Those under the age of 18 cannot have access to firearms at all. And by the way, for the record, like, we're not talking about allowing 8-year-olds and 6-year-olds to have guns or anything like that. But what we are saying is, and this is my personal opinion on this, is that I think every family and every parent should have, this is their domain. This is their child. This is their space that they have authority over as parents, should be able to make the decisions for themselves and for their household as to how they approach issues like this. So you have a 16-year-old, a 15-year-old that you allow to have some limited access to firearms, that you trust them and know them to be of sound mind and body, then, like, guess what? I think that should be your right as a parent to allow that to be an option. And there's plenty of cases where even 12-year-olds have been able to successfully defend them and themselves and their family members from vicious attacks inside their homes. I'm not saying, I'm not trying to advocate any one particular age or anything like that. I'm just saying that I think families should be the authority in situations like this. So I really abhor this type of legislation. The other thing I want to point out is that the language in House Bill 1366 I think is terrible language and is very non-specific. And it talks about how it's illegal for any combination of parts from which a firearm having no serial number may be readily assembled, provided that the parts do not have the capacity to function as a firearm unless assembled. And it's
what does that even mean?
Where
sights?
Where do we draw the line with language like that? Like, what becomes illegal per House Bill 1366 to possess? Like, can I not have certain spare parts for already existing guns in case they go down? Like, as a competitive shooter, that's really huge for me. I have spare triggers, spare sears, spare springs, spare all kinds of things
for serialized guns.
For guns, and for, because those are wear items. They are wear parts that break and need to be replaced from time to time. And so where do we draw the line with a law like this as to which firearm parts I may and may not be able to possess? And this law does not clarify that with any sort of certainty. Like, I don't even know. I don't know what I would be thinking right now if I lived in Hawaii. And we have the interruption of the pups there. So anyway, that's all I had to say about this Hawaii deal. And while Jacob's silencing the pups, let's move on now to Attorney General Derek Schmidt out of Topeka, Kansas, describes changes in concealed carry law taking effect on July 1st. So this has taken effect already, right? But several changes in the Kansas concealed carry law took effect today as of July 1st, as of the reading of this press release, including a reduction in application fees, Attorney General Derek Schmidt said. Among the changes approved during the 2021 Kansas legislative session, a new provisional license will be available for individuals between 18 to 20 years of age. Pretty cool. New provisions also allow issuance of a concealed carry license to individuals who have had certain prior felony or misdemeanor convictions expunged. I think that's pretty cool, actually. Under the terms of the budget passed by the legislature for state fiscal year 2022, the application fee will be reduced from $132.50 to $112. Now, that may still be quite expensive for many of you. And depending on what states you're in, that is very expensive for some of you to get permits. But hey, it's going down, and that's a good downward trend to see. The reduced rate applies to applications received by sheriff's offices between July 1st, 2021 and June 30th, 2022. So, and by the way, the cost for license renewals remains unchanged at $25. So some interesting clarifications from the state attorney general. I particularly think it's interesting that that there's a provisional license available for individuals between 18 and 20 years of age. I think that's pretty remarkable,
we're seeing more states do that.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that they're basically making a pathway forward for individuals that have had felonies and certain misdemeanors expunged from the record. Me personally, knowing some individuals that would fit that category, but yet still are unable to obtain things like concealed carry permits. Like, okay, they might need to move to Kansas. Knowing that now, I think that's a novel idea. Because my personal opinion on this is that once you've paid the price, I think that you should be able to get all your rights reinstated. That's my personal opinion.
I don't know if I'm on the same page with you on that. And I don't know the specifics here in Kansas. I do think that, generally speaking, it's too difficult to get one's rights restored. So I'm generally on the side of making that easier, clearer, more straightforward, etc. But
on expungements, though? Like,
oh no, sure. If it's expunged, it's expunged. Like, you should get your rights restored.
To me, that's a no-brainer. Like, if you got something expunged, there's a good reason why it was expunged, and so why wouldn't you be able to have all rights restored?
Sure. So an expungement, I think I agree with you. But I don't know the specificity here in Kansas. Like, I tried to find it, I couldn't find how it was written or what it said. And there's a link here to the Attorney General where he says you get more detail, and I just didn't have a chance to read it. But I generally err on the side of believing that today it's way too complex, way too difficult, and way too unclear how one gets their rights restored at all. Yeah. And that needs to be fixed. Yeah. Generally speaking.
Absolutely. I think that this is something that most states could give a lot of thought to about providing pathways forward for ex-convicts to be able to have rights restored.
Sure.
Knowing, and someone too, and I have a family member that has a pretty serious charge on their record that will keep them from being able to do certain things. But that person has completely changed their life around and has proven that over years of being a productive, law-abiding citizen of society. And I think it's unfortunate and incredibly unjust that person currently does not have a clear path forward to be able to have rights restored when they have proven that they are a valued member of society now. Anyway.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I don't agree with the blanket premise that if someone pays the time, pays for the crime, then they should have their rights restored.
Well, don't get that confused. I'm on the record of saying something to the effect of that I could see something like, I'm not saying that as soon as you get out of prison, for instance, like let's say you were in an armed robbery and you do 10 years in prison, and the day after you get out of prison that you supposedly have paid the price and therefore automatically get all rights restored. Like, I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying that let's say that you did an armed robbery and you get out of prison, you did your time, you have even maybe 5 years of probation or something like that. But at some point, like, let's say you go 10 years without committing any other crimes. Like, I don't know. I just feel like that's still unjust that, because people do, like, it provides no incentive really for people to actually make their lives better when they know I've already thrown my life away. I might as well just continue down that path.
I'm glad you clarified, because what you said was a little too blanket for me.
Well, and I was being, especially in the context of expungements in the statement I made a moment ago.
That's different.
Yeah.
But what the problem today is there's no clear way to apply for and obtain the restoration of the rights. Yeah. That's the problem. It's not just that, we don't need an arbitrary line where when X is complete, now you get your rights back. What we need, at least initially, at least as a starting point, is a clear method to apply to get the rights back. And that doesn't exist. Yeah.
Yeah. That is low cost and low, that in other words, like right now, if you're going to, in certain states especially, like you've got to hire an attorney and spend thousands and thousands of dollars for them to work the process in the system and try to get in front of the right people. And in some states, you got to have the governor of that state actually say, yeah, okay, we'll give you a pardon on that. And that is pretty much unattainable for most people. Processes like that.
Unrealistic.
But having a process where like you can send in an application to the court and have them review everything, and you can show and provide written testimony of here's how I've changed my life, and I've evidenced that over X number of time or years or whatever, and hear my case, and like having at least a process where it can just be done. I definitely think it's something that could be looked at. But anyway, we're getting kind of
ditto
out there, but cool. Well, that brings us, I think, to the conclusion of the legislative news stories we had for you today. I do want to point out that in the show notes, you will find a couple of additional resources. There is an article on our site at concealedcarry.com called Constitutional Carry and Permitless Carry, breaking down the pros and cons. So if you want to go review that and study a little bit more about constitutional carry, it's a good article. And also, just a reminder, many of you probably already know this, but we have a pretty useful tool on our site called our concealed carry reciprocity map generator. And it's a cool tool because it's completely customizable based on your particular circumstances or situation. If you have multiple permits, for instance, like some of you do from multiple states, you can plug in all that information on our reciprocity map generator, and it'll give you a custom map for you, showing where you cannot carry concealed as far as various states and whatnot. And of course, that same tool is available on our Concealed Carry Gun Tools app as well, which is free to download. So with that, brings us, like I mentioned, to an end. Appreciate you doing this episode with me today, Jacob. Our episode sponsors again were XS Sites, xssites.com, and our new Shall Not Be Infringed t-shirt from concealedcarry.com. You can find that at concealedcarry.com/infringed shirt. Hope you guys will consider picking one of those up. I think they're pretty cool. I plan to get mine here hopefully soon. But Jacob, any last words?
I guess I'll just end by saying we really appreciate everyone's business. When you wake up tomorrow and you think you need some new related gear to do with shooting a gun and being a defensive-minded America, we hope that you'll go to concealedcarry.com and you'll start there. We attempt to obviously be the best priced, and we wouldn't expect you to overpay to do us a solid, but we would hope that you would consider us in your shopping needs as we continue to expand the library of products that we offer, and we work hard to have competitive prices.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yep, we are striving to do our best, and good news is right now, folks, we're doing very well on the fulfillment side of things. So orders that come in ship very quickly. Many of them are shipping same day, and that's not always been the case for us. But we're pretty happy with where we're at. We've got a great team of guys, great staff, customer service side, answering phones, emails, and the guys actually in the warehouse shipping stuff, all doing a great job, and we're proud to have them on our team.
Yeah, we've turned several corners that way recently.
Yeah.
And even with some specific products that we've been just behind on for feels like years, we're getting caught up on. I'll mention quickly dummy ammo. We've been behind on dummy ammo for like ever. And we're finally getting, we're about to turn the corner on that and be in stock all the time on dummy ammo. So anyway, if you've been frustrated with us in the past, we have not been perfect, but we are in a much better place today with our customer service and our fulfillment operation.
Yeah, we've implemented some new software. We got a whole new inventory system, all kinds of things that we've made a lot of gains in that respect. And the dummy ammo thing is really cool because that was really a limitation from COVID-19 that it seems like we're just finally starting to get behind us a little bit. And our supplier on dummy ammo is really cranking them out now. It's really exciting to see. So we'll be hopefully well stocked on dummy ammo here very shortly.
Yep.
Well, guys, again, thanks for your support. I'll just leave my parting words as being, guys, be safe out there. Have a great rest of your week and a great weekend. I hope you're able to get out to the range, do some practice, do some training, maybe shoot a competitive match or whatever it is, but do something to make yourself better and a little bit sharper and a little bit more skilled with the application of whether it's a gun or other tools or hand-to-hand, doesn't matter. I hope you do something to make yourself better. So I know I continue to work at it. So guys, until next time, a reminder to train right, train often, and train safe so that you can fight hard, fight fast, and fight true. Take care.